I see a nice 9 seats up here. Yeah, I don't want me to have to pick who's going to sit in them. Yeah, please. Thank you. Can I get another 2, 3 volunteers to sit in the front row? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lovely seats up here in the front. Please, thank you. You're amazing. You're wonderful. Oh, look, the back has no more seats. The front does. You can sit right here. This is your like over there. I got 2. I saved one for you. There's even another seat right there. Don't worry, you don't have to stand. Come here. I have a seat for you. So I know you have it. Still got 2 seats, 3 lovely seats in the front. Should I? Yeah. Here. Okay. Yeah. Right. Look at that. Seat for you. It's off. Yeah.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Camille Jones. Thank you all for coming out tonight. Oh, okay.
You have to post on Facebook Live.
Oh, sure. Yeah, thank you all for coming out tonight at our first event. I am the CEO and founder of Carry Capacity. Carry Capacity is an organization focused on promoting Caribbean entrepreneurs, sustainability entrepreneurs, and helping with cross-collaboration with the diaspora. Really focused on ICT for D, and using technology solutions to solve climate and sustainability problems.
And hi, I am Georgiana McCoy, but just call me Georgie. And I am the founder of Caribbean in Tech and Entrepreneurship, and we are a New York-based organization that recently became a nonprofit. We've been around since 2014, and since then we've put on about 35-ish events, all focusing on helping build the tech and entrepreneurship scene for Caribbeans that live here in the United States, as well as in the diaspora, and just Black and Latino individuals in general. So we partnered up with Carry Capacity to see what a CITE DC chapter could look like. We haven't done any events outside of New York since. We bussed in our team over there, all came from New York today, and we're going back today. But we definitely wanted to see what was going on in DC and if there was an interest for something like this here, as well as possibly bringing a chapter here in the future. So thank you guys for coming. We're going to start off with an introduction from IDB.
Before we get to the IDB, I did want to just highlight the Bahamas. Let's not forget Hurricane Dorian. The Bahamas is suffering one of the worst tragedies in the Caribbean, and I just wanted to highlight some of the supplies that are needed, and then where you can drop off supplies or find information on the website. Okay, just want to introduce. I'd like to introduce Dora Moscoso. She's the IDB product specialist. Nora works for the Institutional Engagement Unit of the IDB Lab, specializing in project management. She has worked with IDB for more than 2 decades, initiated her career at the Office of the Presidency, and has fulfilled various roles throughout the years in areas such as knowledge development, effectiveness, and strategic engagement. Before joining the IDB, she worked for the private sector in Ecuador, her home country. Dora holds a master's degree from Johns Hopkins Carey Business School. Welcome, Dora.
Thank you. So hi, everyone. So great to be here. I love this place. It's so much fun. Very different from where I come from, which is a building that is not that fun. It's meant to be a hotel. It's been rebuilt through the years, so it's not large. It's not very fun building. So anyhow, I'm here representing the IDB group. The IDB group is in its 60th year anniversary. We've been, we are owned by 48 member countries. 26 of them are located in the Americas, Latin America and the Caribbean, and the others are non-regional. We are the leading finance and know-how institution for the Americas, and that includes the Caribbean region. So the IDB group is comprised of 3 arms. One is the IDB that works with governments and public sector. IDB Invest provides financing to large corporations and financial intermediaries. And I work for IDB Lab, which is the innovation laboratory of the IDB group. And we kind of work with that different group, that niche of, chambers of commerce, cooperatives, in the private sector, entrepreneurs, yes, startups, and also with, civil society groups. So IDB Lab, we were rebranded last year. We used to have a long name called the Multilateral Investment Fund, which meant nothing for many people. So this unites us more with the IDB group and the brand itself. And just to give you a few numbers, not to bore you, but we have presence in 26 beneficiary countries. So we have IDB Lab specialists in every country. And again, we've been around for 26 years. We normally approve around 80 projects per year, because these are small projects. And this is our leverage. For $1 we get 3 back. And we work also with seed and venture capital investments. So what we do, development projects that are market driven. So they need to have a business model behind, a financial model, and they need to aim for exponential or transformative impact for vulnerable populations. So there's a lot of great ideas out there, but if they don't have that combination, this is the formula. We work in 3 areas. In climate smart agriculture, with mostly value chains and innovations to develop and preserve the natural capital and the natural assets. This is where the Blue Economy initiative came in. We do also inclusive or smart cities, provision of basic quality services for the cities, new technologies and innovations, new circular economy models. And the knowledge economy, we work with skills for the 21st century, particularly for the youth. And also we support the knowledge-intensive startups and their ecosystems. So we provide financing in the form of grants, loans, seniors loans, senior loans. We do equity, quasi-equity, direct investment. So a mix of financial instruments, because we've been around for so many years and we have just this huge network in the region. We are able to do a lot of great and have a lot of knowledge of in every thematic area that we've been working on, and we can forge many connections in many ways, and I'm going to show you how. For example, we recently approved an initiative that is meant to create a global alliance for blockchain. So what we're doing is we are trying to facilitate those nascent ecosystems that are not using blockchain, those countries that would not dare to go there. We are trying to finance them using the great muscle of those countries that they are really, forging this great technology. We also connect our partners to events. So we have 2 flagship events that we normally do in a year, the We Exchange, and I know you're familiar with that. That is for women as entrepreneurs. This year is happening in mid-November in Paraguay. I'm afraid that each competition has already closed up, but it's open for participation, and yes, gentlemen can go too. But I think that the part of training and mentoring is for women the first day. And then we have Fotomic, which is an event mostly for networking, in which we bring experts in those 3 thematic areas that I showed you before, the agriculture and orange economy and smart cities. We bring our partners who we approve projects with, so that we can brainstorm together on the new trends and check on what they're doing in the project. It's a great networking opportunity, and this year happens to be in Punta Cana, Dominican Republic, at the end of October. So going to what I guess you want to learn more about is how we finance entrepreneurs, and we do it in 3 ways. We do it through investment or venture capital funds. We provide equity or quasi-equity. We participate in funds, and we have actually 60 funds active in our portfolio, and through those funds we've supported close to 600 startups in the region. And when I say region, please remember it's Latin America and the Caribbean. We also provide grants to ecosystem builders, and I'm going to show you which ones. And we also do early stage ventures. We're not allowed by mandate to just provide grant money to startups. We just don't do that. So this is an example of a fund that we created a year ago with our partner Althelia Ecosphere. That fund will invest in sustainable fisheries and aquaculture to promote economic activities in the blue economy. The fund, I think, provides loans to the startups, and it's running beautifully, and hopefully it will get a lot of traction throughout the years. That one is sort of new. And we also have the CABEF, the Caribbean Basin Sustainable Energy Fund, that has been running for a while now, also focusing on the Caribbean region only. And the idea behind this fund is to provide, it's actually the first clean energy fund in the region, and it's aiming to provide the small and medium enterprises with capital for green energy, clean energy. In terms of grants for ecosystem builders, we have a very interesting project in Barbados with 10 habitats. And this one is particular. We have so many, but I'm just bringing you the highlights. And this one actually leverages the capital from the Caribbean diaspora via crowdfunding for seed financing and capital to the local startups. And Habitat does a great job, and they actually base their model on a model run in Toronto, where they actually do that, and they have wonderful impact. This one is sort of new. It's in the middle of implementation, but it's a great way of helping out those who need it the most. We have an interesting program in Trinidad and Tobago with the Caribbean Industrial Research Institute. We were just talking with a group of friends of how sometimes in the academia they have these great ideas and they invent these new things, but they can't really bring it to market because they have to legalize on patents and there's no commercial mode behind it. So this is what this project is aiming to do. It's trying to bridge that gap between ideation and commercialization. And this is, my baby, the Blue Tech Challenge. We also do challenges. We've done, from last year to this year 4, we did the boot camps for coding challenge. That was for the entire region. in Central America, we recently closed one for the Orange Economy, because you see that there can be some applications with creative industries for health, for example, or for education. So we ran that one that recently closed. I'm going to be doing one in Belize for transformation of the tourism sector through technological innovations. That's going to open very soon. I'm giving you a preview. And the Blue Tech Challenge, we run that for, is basically an open call for proposals for all 48 member countries of the IDB group to partner with one of the 14 target countries in the Caribbean region. We were trying to cover the IDB member countries and the non-IDB member countries, which are the smaller islands, Antigua, Barbuda, Grenada, those ones, and find technological applications to foster the sustainability of the blue economy. We got 50, shortlisted 7, and we actually got 5 winners. I'm going to tell you what happened there. It's very interesting. With Oceana, we partnered in Belize to create a virtual marketplace for fisher folk based on a program that Oceana runs called Fish Right, Eat Right. And with 10 Habitat, we are trying to improve the value chain of the tuna with technology, with tags and also with blockchain and contracts for the fisher folk. With the Pan American Development Foundation, where are my friends here? Yeah. And with the Environmental Cleaning Solutions in Haiti, it actually goes for approval next Wednesday. That project aims to transform ocean-bound plastics into synthetic lumber. With the Clean Marine Group Limited, thank God they're okay. We know this week that they're fine. In the Bahamas, we are creating and actually expanding a marine pollution port reception facility to transform the waste from the cruise ships that arrive into the Bahamas. Actually, they have a very interesting process. It's extremely technical. I learned how to explain it a while ago, and now I get confused. Cavitation something, but yeah, they can actually convert it into clean water. It's just amazing to watch. And this happens to be my favorite because it's a blue entrepreneur from St. Lucia who saw in the influx of sargassum in the coastal communities an opportunity to do something about it and to create an industry, and that's what he's doing. So we are supporting him to convert sargassum seaweed into biofertilizer for export. And the reason why I was pointing this blue entrepreneur out is because I wanted to give you a sense, and this is through a survey run by the Latin American Venture Capital Association, of what is the profile of the new generation of entrepreneurs. This comes from a survey. Actually, entrepreneurs, the new entrepreneur wants positive impact, right? They want to equally focus on profit as well as social and environmental regional impact. They are also ecosystem builders. They help each other, right? They are the founders advise startups, and they could become angel investors for other startups. And they are technology intensive. It's all about technology. As you can see, 73% are using technologies, Internet of Things, augmented reality, phones, you name it. That's the name of the game. It's all about technology. This is just a snapshot of our current portfolio of venture capital funds. This is a sample of the portfolio startups by sector. Note the emphasis on tech in every single sector. And yeah, it's like 666 of them through 50 venture capital funds. I'm not saying that this is the entire universe, because remember that this is just a sample, and remember that this is just one organization doing some little work in the Americas. But just to give you a sense of where things are going. I guess the question here would be, how many are from the Caribbean? Yeah. Sadly, In that sample, not more than 10. Yeah. It was very, disappointing. But I guess, and this brings me to what I believe are the actual constraints, which is them. Thank you, Camille. Constraints for startup formation in the Caribbean region. So we all know that in underdeveloped ecosystems, it's access to capital, right? So that would be the major constraint. But we believe, after all these years of trying to, penetrate in the region and do as much as we can fairly in every single country during the Caribbean region, we believe that the key aspect is the fragmentation of support for the Caribbean startups. They have no connection to professional networks or to the other agents of the ecosystem. Private sector, nonprofits, financial institutions, academia even, or even other entrepreneurs, they lack that. So I think that's important that, this is, probably something copied and pasted from a study, but if you read it, it tells you kinds of the same things that they're going to isolation and lack of connection, but it's actually true that those are the main constraints. So to have the Caribbean diaspora, here tonight, listening to the opportunities and the great need to help each other, I think is very important. And in terms of the opportunities, well, so we all know what happens with the successful startups, right? So successful startups, they would go through multiple rounds of smart capital, and they would, validate the product, they would gain traction, achieve results perhaps. But we believe that, access to capital is important, but in nascent ecosystems such as the Caribbean, it's mostly access to social capital and access to information. So the more you strengthen the social capital, the more information you get. If you rely on your networks, and your social networks, your mentors, your peers, family, friends, even other entrepreneurs, you're stronger. Because the entrepreneurial journey in itself is so complex. You need massive information in terms of, financial processes, tax incentives, just to open a business. There's so many, bureaucratic procedures. And do you rely on, the official website? You would rather rely on a mentor, or you would rather rely on an entrepreneur who's a friend and who's going through the ropes, just like you. So I think we have to strengthen that. And I'm sure that my 15 minutes are over, but I just want to leave you with that thought that it's so important to do this collectively and to place value in those social, in the quality of those connections. So thank you.
We're going to have a quick break, and we're going to have an icebreaker.
Hey guys, so I'm back. Georgie's back. So how you guys liking the event so far? I know we just got started. The food was great. George gave some great information just now. And now I have a few trivia questions for you guys, all about the Caribbean. We're not going to take too much time to do this, but just for a raise of hand, let's start off. Who here is either a first or a second generation Caribbean? All right, yes. Keep your hands up if you were born in the Caribbean, but then you kind of immigrated to the United States. Okay, so that's another good amount of folks. And who here is just interested in learning more about the Caribbean, and that's why you came to the event today? All right, another good percent of the room. So we see that from Dora's facts. Like, it's not me making stuff up, that the Caribbean is definitely in need of support. There's a lot of people from the Caribbean, of Caribbean descent, and folks that are allies. They want to support, they want to help, they want to invest, they want to learn more about opportunities in the Caribbean. But what does the Caribbean really look like? So the first trivia question is, how many islands, and get into hijack phones, do not Google this, it's 2 seconds, just guess. How many islands are there in the Caribbean? Raise your hand. Not countries. Physical islands. All
500.
right. Just shout out a number. 150, too low. Still too low. A little warmer. A little less. Too low though. All right. You guys give up? 7,000 islands are in the Caribbean. So that makes up a lot of space, but now let's go to countries. How many countries are in the Caribbean?
200.
No. We're not that high. Not that many countries. All right, that's the one that's 26. So there are 7,000 islands, but there are 26 countries in the Caribbean. So now, if you guys paid attention and, at least paid attention to Black History Month, you didn't have to take any Black Studies classes to learn this one or any Caribbean Studies classes, but what was the first Caribbean island to gain their independence?
Haiti.
Thank you. If y'all got that wrong, I would have had to leave. You said? All right. So that just goes to show, there's a lot of potential. There's a lot of physical spaces in the Caribbean, 7,000 islands, and there's a lot of countries, 26. But what we still feel right now is the fragmentation, like Dora mentioned. A lot of the islands are kind of very much separated and segregated in terms of, if you're in Jamaica, you're not really doing business in Trinidad. Nowadays, there's more of that action going on, and Akua can speak to that when you guys have the panel here. But there needs to be more connectivity. So that's why we created Caribbean and Tech and Entrepreneurship, to start building that ecosystem here in the United States, where we have many people already from many different islands connecting and learning and engaging with each other, and in hopes of bringing that back home. So I'm not going to give any more time here. I'm going to come back on close to the end and give you guys some more details about Caribbeans in Tech. Actually, no, real quick. If you guys are interested in bringing Caribbeans in Tech to DC, please go to bit.ly and /CITE, CITE DC. So bit.ly /CITE, CITE DC. We can put that on the screen. So this is just an interest forum to see who's interested in having a CITE chapter here, and how we could start putting on more events that have these conversations, whether it's panels. We also have a Caribbean and Tech membership where we do like monthly events. We've done a few 3 years now. We've done the Caribbean and Tech Summit that happened the National Caribbean American Heritage Month in June. So we'll have a lot of programs coming up, and we want to produce even more programs that benefit and again bring that support of the ecosystem connected. It's similar to what IDB is doing and carry capacity. So yeah,
Is that right?
The slash in between the and no period after site. So slash, yeah, and then erase the down. All right, so just fill out that quick little interest form so we can gauge who's interested in how we can come back. Share with your friends if they're not here, so we can know, like, is there truly a need to bring more side events to DC? And I would like to now welcome Camille to introduce the panel.
Thank you so much, Georgie. And wanted to introduce you to some top-notch entrepreneurs from the diaspora, from the United States, and also from Jamaica. First one is Christian Douglas, CEO of Fond Bank. Marjuan Kennedy, she's CEO of Sepia Works, and Akua Walters, CEO of Hacker Costa. Please join me on the panel. Okay. Well, I'm going to leave it up to you to introduce yourself, because you all have a wealth of experience, many businesses that you run, and you know more of your business yourself than I do. So I'm just going to hand it over to you. If you could introduce yourself, explain what you do, what your company does, and what's your goal, what's the vision for your company.
Thank you, Camille. I'm Chris Douglas. I'm the founder of Fond Bank. But before I get into that, I'm born in Jamaica. I went to Stella Maris. And recently was speaking to a Jamaican friend of mine. He was in Europe for a number of years, and he calls me Duffus. He's like, Duffus, you know, you can go anywhere in the world, and you can, you know, they're playing Jamaican reggae music, like every minute of the day in every country. And I thought about that for a second, and you know, it means that we're, for a little small island, that we have this sort of global reputation and calling card. Wherever we go, people know Jamaica, they like Jamaica, and you know, they may not know where it is on the map, but they've heard of Bob Marley, and you know, I think that's a pretty powerful thing. And as an entrepreneur, I think about that as maybe my first sort of scaling example. And you want to create these sort of global influences and opportunities on a limited budget, but you do that by, you have to think big and leverage your network. And so at Phone Bank, it's really sort of the culmination of many things that I've done before in my professional career. I've sold 3 companies. My sort of area of expertise is in financial technology. I've raised over $50 million in venture capital from the leading firms in the U.S. I started my career at Goldman Sachs, and you know, all are great things. And I've learned a lot, and I've run into Jamaicans and many diaspora along the way. And now, you know, I'm at a point in my career and see a much bigger global opportunity, and I want to be just like reggae music. Everywhere, played all the time.
Not sure I'm going to follow that, but let's try. Hi everybody, my name is Akbar Walters. I'm Jamaican as well. My accent stays with me, fortunately. I'm one of the two-part team at Hacker Hostel. We're a really small company. We started out of the first accelerator program put on by the government of Jamaica called Startup Jamaica. And that was also, I think, the IDB was involved in that project as well. And out of that came 2 companies, which my co-founder and I started, which was Startup Robot, and I had Smart Taxi at the time, which was kind of like a Uber for Jamaica. Those 2 companies eventually petered out. And out of that, the one lesson that we learned was that there are some big challenges in the world, and one of them, outside of climate change, was the continuing need for tech talent, and specifically tech talent that was closer to the source. You might be familiar with tech job outsourcing out of the United States into India and places like Canada, for instance. We decided to solve the problem of how do we find and train more software engineering talent located closer to the Eastern Seaboard than was previously done. The most of the people out of Silicon Valley you'll find are finding their talent closer to Mexico, along what we like to call Latin America. But very, very few companies actually understand that the English-speaking Caribbean actually makes up, I think, the 2nd largest population in the Caribbean outside of the Spanish-speaking countries. And we share a lot of cultural similarities with not just England, but Canada and the United States. And there are comparative advantages to working with English-speaking Caribbean nationals who, interestingly enough, tend to be some of the highest performing software engineers in the world. So that's the problem that we're solving, and I'm sure that we can do, if the opportunity that we're thinking about in terms of developing software engineering talent in the Caribbean is as big as we think, eventually one day we will come as ubiquitous as if you think about, like, when you think about Jamaica, you might think about like Sandals, for instance, where we strongly believe the idea that you can create the product locally, just like reggae music. You can create the product locally, but it ought to have an international market. As a population of what, 2.9 2.7 million people isn't enough to sustain an international brand like a sandal. So most of that market is based outside of Jamaica. And I'm looking forward to sharing more about the Caribbean, as we have done a lot of cohorts throughout the Caribbean, Jamaica, Trinidad, Barbados, and now we're heading into Puerto Rico to satisfy, to look at how we can work with communities within Puerto Rico and the Midwest, interestingly enough, the United States, in building local capacity that can better serve the US market. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Marshawn Kennedy. I am a Trinity American, first generation, native Washingtonian, and I'm a filmmaker, director, writer, producer for both theater and films. I'm coming from more of the creative, artistic perspective tonight, and I'm also an entrepreneur. I'm the founder of a multimedia production company called Sepia Works, and a nonprofit called the Kennedy Foundation for the Arts, both based here in DC. So a lot of the work that I'm doing is really pulling together the resources that I have here in DC, as well as throughout the Caribbean diaspora, and really working throughout New York, Trinidad, Tobago, some work in Puerto Rico as well, and getting artists together to create that work and distribute our content. So really in the last 7 to 8 years, I've been working as an independent creative, and I have directed multiple films, commercial content, as well as started my own brands. I'm the CEO and co-founder of the children's media brand, Callaloo Kids. So that is probably one of the more Caribbean-focused pieces that I've created with the team here. Children's books, animation, digital content, all focusing on cultural content with Caribbean stories at the heart of it. So that's just one of the pieces that I've created, and I'm really excited to be a part of this panel just to talk a little bit more about what artists need and what creatives need, and kind of the artistic side, but also the business side, getting us to think about, what do young people need? A lot of the work I do in my nonprofit is around the education of Black and brown children in the spaces of creative arts and media. So thank you.
Thank you all very much. So you all have stated that you worked in many different countries, Puerto Rico, Trinidad, Barbados, and also in sub-Saharan Africa, or globally, right? You want to tackle the world. So what are some of the challenges that you have come across in working in these in different countries? What are some of the best practices that an entrepreneur would need to work in different countries? Because I guess one of the false notions is that all islands are the same, and yes, we share culture, but we're also very different, and we have our nuances. So we'd love for you to share some perspective on that. Anyone?
Well, I actually look for similarities, right? And in the same way that someone likes, that's why I use the analogy of reggae music. One of the interesting things, best products probably in the history of humanity is this thing called Facebook, probably one of the worst products too. But you have billions of people globally that use it, and in many parts of the world, call it the continent of Africa, Central, South America, and Caribbean, because they don't have competition from other online media sources, they probably utilize that platform about an hour to two more every day than the average Western, U.S., European counterpart. And so, you think about sort of segmenting those types of people globally, and they're pretty powerful, and they've not actually been really used for many of these emerging markets. So I would think about how you might, if you want to go back home or do target customers there, or if you want to target customers globally, use those platforms. They're global communities, right? In the same way that people like reggae music, they like knitting, they like, you know, children's books, certain types of technology. And those are global common things that no matter where you are, you can find that little niche, but on a global scale.
Yeah, for me, one of the challenges, and I'll speak directly to a project that I worked on, in 2014, I was producing a short film called The Resort, and shot on location in Tobago, actually. And the cast and crew was about 50% American, and then hired local in Trinidad and Tobago. So that was, I mean, that was part of our initiative. You know, all the producers, we wanted to make sure that we were working with, you know, content creators on the island, and not just feeling like, you know, we're outsiders coming in. But I think one of the challenges that we faced was just, this was our first time shooting. Most of the cast coming from the US was of Caribbean descent, but the process of working, we were coming from LA and New York, and our process of working was very different than working with filmmakers. Not to say it's good or bad, it was just a different process. So even as, you know, all of us, we were in our mid to late 20s, just getting the crew, getting the financing, getting everything we need to create the production there, and understanding that, you know, people work differently, whether it's the, you know, the government systems, the actual artists, the distribution, the outlets that are already there, and us having to create, you know, a project that is $100,000 on a small, low budget scale for a film was challenging. And as well as the follow-up, I think, you know, we were all the producers and the directors, we were well intent. We had good intentions to come into, you know, because we were, a lot of us were from Trinidad. We wanted to not just create this piece and then leave, but have a relationship. And what we found, that there wasn't a strong, sustainable film industry there where we could continue to stay in contact. There are some festivals and things like that that do exist, but in terms of the infrastructure, it was very difficult to maintain those relationships and to continue to build. And I know, like in New York, there are a lot of great organizations that work within Caribbean diaspora the film community. But I'd like to see more of that. I think that, you know, as creative artists, we have, well, what I think we need is not only funding to fund our projects, but space and time and, you know, networks to distribute our content. It's one thing to create, you know, reggae music or to create, you know, our films, and then no one sees it, or we're not compensated as artists. We're just, you know, this is good exposure. So I think those are some of the challenges that I've seen just being on site, you know, working in between, you know, from the States and in the islands.
I mean, to Marjor's point, a lot of the entrepreneurs that come onto the Caribbean, we don't get the MBA type education that's sometimes required to efficiently run a business, right? So what tends to happen for us is in Jamaica, there are a lot of context. Please understand that a lot of the context that I'll be giving you is around Jamaica, Trinidad, and Barbados, because that's where most of my experience is centered around. In Jamaica, a lot of the capital is centered around tourism, which is the biggest money maker, and then the financial services sector. In Trinidad, you'll find that when oil and gas, up until maybe 2 or 3 years ago, was operational, that's where the government and the private sector made most of its money. That's how manufacturing came about. So what you'll find is a lot of these, I hate to say it, but cliques, a lot of these families buy and sell to the same families. The stewards in Jamaica who own sandals, for instance, they are the guys that are buying from like the Bull Bruns in St. Lucia, who are buying tours from the Bull Bruns in St. Lucia. Right? Like there's just some names in the Caribbean. If you're around long enough, you'll know them. And I say that to say that basically when a new entrepreneur enters the market in the Caribbean, what's sorely lacking for us is customers. The old boys, as I like to call them, don't buy from us. It's the long and short of it. They don't buy from us. Our customers often come, like if we're in Jamaica, for instance, I have to leave Jamaica in order to find customers. The government of Trinidad and Tobago, government of St. Lucia, government of Antigua, those are my customers. The government of Jamaica has no idea who Aqua is. And that's the story for a lot of entrepreneurs who made it, who are Jamaican. They've had to leave the country in order to find customers. So we're talking about constraints and challenges. Our biggest challenge will always be access to customers and access to markets. Because our products are more or less as good as what's created on the international market, but we just don't trust our local people. And there are these hurdles, as I just pointed out, around formal entrepreneur education. TED Habitat, Selwyn, who runs TED Habitat in Barbados, doing a great job around taking the model that Startup Jamaica had to some degree of a local accelerator that takes people who have an idea and accelerates them to a point where they actually have a chance at failing properly, right? Because we're very realistic in the Caribbean. Our constraints around funding and capital markets are very real. So I hope that the lessons that we try to teach our entrepreneurs is how to fail as fast as possible. But that really and truly is one of the biggest constraints for us in the Caribbean: access to customers.
Definitely. Just a note on the distribution network. I recently met an entrepreneur who started Quelly TV in DC. It's a Deshana, yeah. It's a network that supports African diaspora filmmakers. So if you're looking to distribute, I'm sure you've heard of her, but yeah, African diaspora, the Caribbean, etc., all over the world. Yeah, there are many different challenges working on internationally and here in the United States. Chris, you were able to successfully exit 3 companies. What are some of the experiences that you would like to share in terms of exiting? Why did you exit? And what are some of the opportunities to exit that are available out there?
I'll give you a little secret. My strategy is get in early and then hang out for dear life. But seriously, there's this, I don't know if many of you, if you're in the tech space, you've heard this sort of concept of product market fit. And so, one of my mentors once told me, he's like, Chris, there's no difference in being early many times and wrong. And so if you don't have that alignment, you could run out of money. And so I would say, what I've done, I liken myself to a plumber, but we provide sort of financial plumbing. And our products have residual value. I was talking to someone about this the other day. There's a sushi burrito spot I used to go to all the time. And it's really good. But they gave you way too much, it was like 12 inches worth of sushi, and for like $10 or $12. I was like, look, they could charge me, $8 and give me half the amount, and I would be fine. Well, sure enough, they went out of business. And The unfortunate thing about it is, however clever innovation that sushi burrito was, there will probably no longer be that sushi burrito spot. One of the things I learned about sort of the software business is that if you create a piece of software that works and you have customers, you may or may not, sometimes you'll hit that product market fit and you'll be a billion-dollar company. But many times, as long as you can get some customers around it and invest, sort of like I like these old parables, you know, build a brick house, right? Something that's lasting and that has a residual value. Others will like it and use it as well. So in my last company, I partnered with my colleagues from a previous venture, my first venture we sold, and we, you know, crafted some of the best product in this industry. And it took us a while, but ultimately ended up selling it to a company called SoFi, and they're using it for their SoFi at Work product because it was better than, you know, their existing platform that they're using. And so, you know, it's something that now will have a residual value and will be used for years and years and years to come in whatever form or fashion that SoFi takes. And so I think that's a big part of building your business or whatever the opportunity is. Think about sort of what that residual value that you think you can create in it is. And that could be, you know, a unique screenplay or a unique sort of a unique know-how, any number of different, it's like some unique artistry of some sort, and spend a lot of time understanding sort of who your customers are, or who they could be. In many cases, your customers don't even know what they don't know yet, but there are a lot of ways in which you can test that out without actually spending a lot of money. At least I've learned how to do that well, and especially dependent on, you know, you think about sort of, there might be things that are unique to your, you know, your respective countries and regions, and actually one of the things I love doing when I travel the world is I just watch behaviors, and I'm like, oh, we could use that here in the States, or we could use that some other place, or I could repackage this and sell it as a service. Again, that's just me and my easy way.
Thank you. Akua, so you work with many university graduates and young entrepreneurs, young, talented, tech-talented students that are interested in tech. What is your experience working with these entrepreneurs or with these young tech talent in the Caribbean region? What are some of the challenges that they have in particular? And what do you feel like the education system needs?
Thanks. So you're right. I do work with a lot of universities, mainly the University of West Indies, which, as it so happens, is I'd like to call it the sole sort of regional university. If you're born in a big islands, Jamaica, Trinidad, and Barbados, chances are, or even one of the smaller ones, chances are you're going to Cape Hill for law. You're going to St. Augustine, which is in Trinidad, for engineering, or you're going to Jamaica for all of the above, right? But what I found with our local guys, in terms of software engineering at the very least, which I can attest to, they're very malleable in their willingness to learn new skills around software. But here's the big problem that we as Caribbean people are having now. Our customer service is really hard. Like Malcolm over there can attest to this, right? Because like we worked with Malcolm before, and like one of the big things that we found is that, yeah, these guys will come out of college with some of the base level skills that we can build on. But what really hurts us in the long run is being able to communicate with a customer every day. You know, being able to just send an email to say, yeah, I'm going to miss that deadline, but here's how we're going to fix it. we're the kind of people where we tend to be very solitary. So we'll be in that project, we'll be on that little, that one line of code for 10 weeks, and we're like, almost there, we're almost there, we're almost there. So come. Right? And like that is just one of the very few areas in which we can we can improve. Talking about how the formal education system can address that. We have what are called mandatory basic classes that you have to do in university. Right? Like emotional intelligence, can't stress it enough, is one of those. Customer service is huge. Is one of those courses that I think that we ought to stress more in the formal education system in the Caribbean. If you go to any airport in the Caribbean, I'll call out specifically the Norman International Airport here in Kingston. The customer service can be terrible, right? And it has everything to do. I think it has less to do with the intent of the individual, and has everything to do with here's where I am emotionally, and I'm going to relay that to you today, right? Like there's a lot of that. There's a lot of that interpersonality. Jamaicans are great people, but there's a lot of that interpersonality work that we definitely can impart to the people leaving our universities and colleges. And believe me, that goes a long way in being able to have a great customer experience.
Thank you. Marjorie, you've created Callaloo, and you've worked a lot with promoting cultural education appreciation. I'm just wondering, what is the state of cultural appreciation in this country, and what is your experience with working with other young people, other artists in just cultural appreciation, and just in general the acceptance of it as well?
Yeah, for me, and I'll tell you guys a little bit about Callaloo and how it started. It really was just a story that I wanted to create that paid homage to, being first generation Trini and my perspective and understanding of folklore and culture, being an American kid growing up in a Trini household, which I knew people here could relate to. No matter if you're from the islands or not, we all have grandparents and great-grandparents and parents who came from another country, and there are some cultural practices that we lose, that we keep, that we develop into new identities. So for me, it started off as a play back in 2012, and it morphed into a children's book series, into digital content, into puppetry, into a series of cultural creative content that really kind of happened by accident, but it happened with the purpose of, reaching young people and reaching, homes where there was a need for creative content that was culturally based, that was based with people of color creating it. And I think that has been really the thing that has made Callaloo stand apart, that we're about 95% women. We are Black and brown people from the Caribbean, African American, Latino, and that really comes forth in our content, which I think, when you watch, Nickelodeon, or your kids are watching PBS Kids, and if you are a parent of color, even if you're not, you want your child to be exposed to the different cultures that the world makes up, which has been my experience. It's been surprising, and I think we've all kind of talked about, you were talking about it, how most of our audience has been non-Caribbean, actually. We've gotten a lot of support from Caribbean communities, but I think because there isn't a strong infrastructure in children's media that I've experienced in Trinidad specifically, we've gotten interest from Sesame Street, from PBS Kids, from the Kennedy Center, from these larger institutions that do see the value in what we're creating, and that we're creating it, independently, that we don't have a huge corporation telling us what stories we're going to tell. We're telling it from, our grandparents, what the stories that they told us, or the food traditions that we've maintained around the table. So I think that there's a huge need for it, obviously, the climate that we're living in, socially and politically. But I think that as artists, we're kind of, as creative people, we're kind of stuck in this space where, we want financial gains and we want to be commercial. But those of us who do have a strong interest in maintaining our cultural traditions and having social impact, a lot of times that doesn't sell. So I think young artists are really faced with that. Should I go more the commercial route if I'm going to be in hip hop, or should I maintain some of my cultural roots? But really, for me, in my experience, because I have embraced more of my cultural identity, I've been able to stand out and kind of carve a path for younger artists or artists that I mentor or who collaborate with me, for them to, embrace that as well. Because truly, as a creative person, you're creating based off of what you know. And I think we need to encourage that. I encourage that with all the young people that I teach, especially, that, you shouldn't be trying to erase who you are. And I studied theater and film traditionally in university. And a lot of times that's what happens. You just kind of learn this Eurocentric way of practicing art. But we practice art as Caribbean people or African people at home. And it might not be celebrated in a way that it's on TV, but I think finding the ways to celebrate our culture and to maximize it and profit from it, and maybe not profit from it all the time, but understanding that there is an audience for it. So I think from my experience, I haven't sold my company yet, but from my experience, there is a huge audience, not just in the Caribbean directly, but throughout the entire diaspora.
The last two questions. Any advice for entrepreneurs to get into your line of work? And do you have any resources to share? Any podcasts, any newsletters, any people you follow that anyone should know about?
Follow your passion. The thing with entrepreneurship, you'll have fantastic days, but you'll have horrible days. And if you're not passionate about what you do, it will be drudgery every day. And so, it's got to be that thing that you geek out about. And if you're talking to them at a cocktail party and people are like kind of shying away because like, oh my gosh, I don't want to talk about this. That's what you do, right? And you have to own that, and you have to become an expert in that thing. And you don't even, because ultimately it's that enthusiasm that will be your sales, and that people will buy into you and invest in you. Regarding resources, I know what you don't know. It's going to sound really silly, but Wikipedia is a pretty good source. I actually have got a patent in RF engineering, and I like to say that I'm a classically RF trained engineer from Wikipedia. So,
for advice, for me, it would be customers first. whatever you're building, whatever you're selling. It could be sweet drinks in a bag at the side of the road, or you could be selling Remy hair. It doesn't matter. Once you figure out your customers, you can build a pretty stable business behind that. Like I keep saying, and I keep harping on, education is entrepreneurial education is sort of lacking in the Caribbean. And I think like people like Steve Blank, Y Combinator, like they've been doing a great job. Like these are the people I learned from. They've been doing a great job of putting their content online. The lean startup and lean business model canvas. Those two are also really great resources. But learning to use those resources, Steve Blank has some great lean startup canvas advice on YouTube. Like he takes you through all of the blank spaces on the canvas that can really help you to kind of figure out who your customers are, what your business looks like. If you can't fill out the lean business canvas, you probably don't have a business. For resources, I'd probably say, I'm not going to tell you to read 5 books a day, but I definitely tell you NPR, some more news on YouTube. Like I found most of my customers, ironically enough, by picking up a newspaper, because they're always news. Basically, what news is here's what the problems are in today's world. You know, there's a community over here that doesn't have running water or electricity. Who knows? Maybe you're a solar engineer, like my friend Danelle from St. Lucia. Maybe you're a solar panel engineer. You can figure out a way to make a microgrid there, right? There are all of these problems that are constantly coming up in the news, and believe me, like just reading the news and following current events will yield as much learning as I dare say Dostoevsky or any of those other guys. It's really a lesson in figuring out, learning to read the news, basically. Yeah.
For me, I would say advice just to hone your craft first. You know, if you're really good at what you do, you know, whether it's music or film, dance, you know, just get really good at it. I've always found that, you know, folks who are, whether you're classically trained in university or, you know, you have a teacher in the community, if you put in that work, in those hours, forget how much they say, it's like 10,000 hours, put in your 10,000 hours, no one can really take that away from you. And you'll be able to move into different spaces in your field. So similar, you know, to Chris, I kind of, you know, I taught myself how to direct, I taught myself how to write, I taught myself how to independently publish books. I taught myself how to do a lot of these things because of that fire of just being a storyteller, which I knew I was already good at. So I would just encourage people, you know, to get really good at your craft. And in terms of resources, I honestly think that your resources are all around you. You know, your friends, your family, your customers. I think those are your first customers. To pay attention to the people and the businesses that already exist that you can collaborate with. I think a lot of times we're trying to look outside of what we have. You know, if only, you know, I could get this contract, if only I could get signed to this big label, instead of just working from, you know, the ground up. Every business started from the ground, whether they had, you know, $100,000 investment or if they only had $1,000. So I think to always keep that in mind, you know, get your friends together. I love Issa Rae's story. When I lived in LA, Issa and I were part of the same writing circles, and she just kept working with her friends. And she wasn't so concentrated about the content, you know, her first web series, that web series didn't look like what Hollywood wanted, but her writing was the thing that sold her, and being consistent. So she just kept going and going and going, and 10 years later, you know, she's putting on other content creators. She has her own deal at HBO. So I think consistency is a huge thing, and just tapping into the resources you already have. Get your friends together, and all the things that you don't know how to do, you got to invest time into learning some new skills.
Well, thank you, everyone. I'm going to open it up for questions now. Does anyone have any questions for our panelists?
How do you start your morning to be at your best? Answer in an ideal or realistic way. Your choice.
You know, I get up, I do some yoga. I actually read a series of I would say newspapers, but I read them all online. And one of the things I have sort of skills that I found, and I drink a cup of coffee. But I read the headlines, and I'll go through like the Wall Street Journal, read every single headline. I'll go to Bloomberg, read every single headline. The Financial Times, I'll read every single headline. You know, and all sort of the industry magazines or publications that I follow, read every single headline. And if there's something that's pertinent to what I'm doing, I'll drill it. Then I'll go in and Washington Post, New York Times, Axios, Drudge Report, even headlines. And you know, to your point about sort of understanding what's going on, what are the problems in the world, I'll do it. And I listen to NPR too.
I know I don't look it, but I used to play water polo and swim for Jamaica. And the one thing that's taught me is just roll out of bed and get going. That fire for me comes from just getting up, opening my eyes and just saying, okay, great. I've already got my list of things to do. Just start the first one. You know, they say that the trick to being successful for a day is just knocking off the simplest things. Yeah, that's what all those years of trading has got me. Like basically, if my focus is to build this business, then just get up, make a cup of coffee, get going. Right.
I do drink coffee in the morning, coffee and tea alternate. Actually, for me, I'll speak a little bit more about my nighttime routine because morning, it just changes for me. But my nighttime, actually, as I've gotten older, I've had to just create better habits with sleeping. And I still juggle a lot of different things. So for me, you know, certain days I spend more time on creative work. Maybe on Tuesday, I'm spending more time on my nonprofit. The next day, I'm spending more time on writing. The next day, I'm editing. And it just shifts. But I've had to make these decisions just on my habits, just so I could function better as a full-time entrepreneur, and just juggling a lot of projects and clients and needs of other people. So I think the self-care at night is more important for me, that I'm sleeping enough. As much as we're all connected digitally, and my boyfriend will attest to it too, just putting the phone down and taking time to read and not being so plugged in, especially at night. I found that, you know, if I'm on Facebook or if I'm checking other people's lives, I'm not fully paying attention to what's happening in my own life and the things that I need to do for the next day. So really, I'm like a to-do list type of person. I'm writing in my journal at night, not every night, but you know, when I just know how I feel when I'm doing those things at night to prepare for the next day. And really, you know, looking at that to-do list and saying, hey, you know, I can't do this, you know, this week. I have to move it to next week, and being okay with it. I think for a lot of also women entrepreneurs, we try to do everything and please everybody personally and professionally. And I'm learning that, you know, and I'm expecting my first little one, so I'm juggling. Thank you. I'm learning to juggle that. I want to say balance, but I mean, I think it's always, you're always going to have a zillion things to do, but knowing, you know, what are the things that need to get done today versus the end of the week versus the end of the month, and being very clear with your expectations.
I have a question for Dora.
I'm the Minister Plenipotentiary to Aruba, island of 100,000. So we have very limited resources. So you have big islands and you have tiny islands. You have Bonaire with 10,000. Small populations. The young entrepreneurs, they don't have, not always I think Aku was saying that they don't have a way of communicating with others in the field. Has IDB think about a platform in where these young entrepreneurs, young startups, coders can reach each other out through a platform and can get that knowledge from each other? Because normally what we do now is we're swimming in a deep ocean without knowing where to start, how to start. It's the lack of expertise and the lack of others that has already been there, especially for the young entrepreneurs on small islands.
Yes, in fact, I don't know if you've heard of Tech Beach Retreat. It happens, I think, this year in Bermuda and in Jamaica. We are in the eligibility process right now with them, but hopefully that will become one of those. Remember the grants for ecosystem builders. So the idea, they started off this, and they're from Jamaica, in fact. They started off, very young and trying to get, doing some great networking, and they've become, the ones that get the calls from Silicon Valley on, what is happening in the region. We need more, tech people and things like that. And they were so overwhelmed, and they came to us, and we had a long discussion on how to help them, and we will be helping them, in fact, to create that platform so that they can connect, the young entrepreneurs with mentors, investors all over the world, and kind of go global, and just give them the basic, incubation and acceleration services, and then, prepare them for pitch competitions and so forth. But they also have a very nice program to support these young entrepreneurs, and even go to high schools and get, plant that seed of, the importance of technology and networking, and the importance of loving your idea and sticking to it, because you will get the resources. And it's okay to fail, pivot, continue, reshape, and go. So, and that's just one of many that we do, but I think it's relevant to mention because it's going to come soon, and so.
And that's the link between all the items.
Yes, they want to work in all the items.
Hi everybody, my name is Jan and I'm based in DC and New York. I'm one of the organizers. I want you to utilize social media because Akua is somebody who is not afraid of social media. He found me on Twitter 3 years ago, and then I think, did I connect you to Georgie?
Oh, yeah.
I connected.
Georgie, Malcolm,
Yeah, I connected Akua. He just reached out to me on Twitter, told me about Hacker Hostel. I introduced him to Georgie. He was part of, what's he part of?
He's been part of 3 events, and we met in person tonight.
And then I introduced him to my cousin in London who works for PayPal. So and he's working, I don't know if you guys are working together, but so Twitter and LinkedIn are great. And it's not hard to do a cold intro. It's a DM, it's an email, and you never know who might answer. One more question.
Back to your point, Minister. That's one of the reasons why I started Caribbean Capacity to create connections with the Caribbean, with other entrepreneurs and other tech companies here, other diasporas, professionals, to see if we can bring back some of that knowledge to the Caribbean and help all the islands, especially the small ones.
Do you have any entrepreneurs who want to big themselves up? What do? You want everybody in the room to know what you do? Yeah, I'm Jamaican. She's next, hold on.
Well, I'll start with my big up. My name is, well, thank you to the panelists. My name is Shamika Farquhar. I am the founder of Silka Tribe. We are a gateway community to the Caribbean carnival culture. We do that through dance fitness, a performing group, and edutainment, and of course, a trip to carnival. My question to the entrepreneurs, Chris mentioned earlier, there's a very slight difference between early and wrong. And having been celebrating 4 years into the game, it's like, am I just early in this, or do I need the time to pivot? So I would love to hear you guys. I mean, I get it. There's no, this one goes, it depends, but just hearing your experience on the pivot versus the drop this or keep going.
So with things like that, especially very consumer-driven businesses, you have to do a lot of testing, right? And what I mean by that is, like, you might have an ad in some, like, you know, how do you communicate to prospective customers, right? And just because it worked one way or didn't work one way doesn't mean that it doesn't work, right? I've always found that, you know, you should generously reinterpret like businesses or services and do exactly what they're doing if it works, right? And then you can modify that for yourself. So if there's a Irish dancing diaspora trip somewhere, why wouldn't, you know, see, and it's doing really well, see how it works, and then you do the same thing for your, but when you say pivot, what I interpret that, given sort of what you mentioned, was, you know, maybe I should think about like how I might change my marketing and be very nimble with that until you find the right sort of thing that works for you. One example, just like as a benchmark from a web marketer that I know, he's like, you know, it might take 20 different ads, creatives that you have to run before you find one. So if you've gone through 20, you know, then, you know, maybe, but most people haven't gotten that far.
I'll just be brief. So Startup Robot, which was the company that Winston, my co-founder, had at Startup Jamaica. I basically worked for Startup Robot at like what, at $20 a week for about 6 months, and that was just enough money to get back to work, right? Get back to the office next morning. And why we decided to pivot out of Startup Robot, which did online business registration services for, like, if you're ever going to register a business in Jamaica, you will know the horror of the of inefficient government services. So we decided to basically do online business registrations. What we found out pretty quickly was that people basically, why pay for it when I can do it for free? Just go up to the tax office, government office, and suffer for maybe 10 weeks, and eventually come out on the other side with a registered business. When we looked at pivot, why we pivoted was because we figured out pretty quickly that nobody would really be interested in. Some people would be interested in paying us that $200 to do it, but more people were interested in like, you know, we need software built. Companies were coming to us and saying, okay, I will pay you $10,000 if you can just build this website. I'll pay you $20,000 if you train my people to do it. I'll pay you $30,000 if you come and work for me. And that pretty much that market demand basically got us to the point where we're able to say, okay, we used to do business registration for, was that $200? We now do business registration for $5,000 because we tell people we don't do it. If you want that service, that's going to cost you $5,000. It's that simple. And we basically moved out of that business by charging more. We still do it, but we charge more. And now we're training software engineers, which is what the market demands. Always listen to your customers. That's what's going to get you to pay for it. That's what's going to force you to pay for it, because those bills have to be paid.
Yeah. Yeah, just to piggyback quickly on that, for me, most of my work is project-based, so, you know, you realize in every project you learn something you're really creating a new idea every single time you do a new film or a new dance or a new song, and you just put that out there and see how the world reacts to it. And so for me, my first piece, Girls, 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 a one-woman show that I made in a basement and eventually a year later went off Broadway, then toured it, and then, but I actually thought at that time, oh, this is a brilliant piece that, is addressing Black and brown women in the media, and it's using satire and comedy and humor, but it was way ahead of its time back in 2010, where now in 2019, a Black lady sketch show exists. There are more Black and brown women writers and content creators than at that time that, is in the media and that we celebrate. So I think as someone who creates content, just putting it out there and then seeing what works and doesn't work, I had to learn from that experience. But now that there is a space for it, I'm bringing it back. So just putting your work out there, and even if it fails, I think holding on to those nuggets that do work, that do make a mark, whether it's with customers or whether it's with your audience. You just hold on to that, and then you pivot where what works best at the time. And then, again, as entrepreneurs, we want to do everything and we want to be everywhere, but really taking the time to say, hey, yes, this works and this doesn't work. And right now I'm just going to focus on this to scale it. So I hope that answers a bit.
Okay, one last question. Okay, we're gonna leave the questions for the networking. We don't want to keep you too late, and we want to make sure that everyone gets to meet each other. So just to quickly wrap up here, you can email me, Camille at Care Capacity. You can follow Care Capacity on Twitter. But I'm here in DC. I also work at a DC startup, Mark Labs. So I'm sure I'll be seeing you all at different events. But my goal for this organization is to really encourage the diaspora to get more involved in the Caribbean, especially around sustainability tech startups, so climate change, new economy, and other types of tech startups. So yeah, I'd love to continue connecting.
Thank you. And with that, we want to just give our panel a final round of applause. Again, if you want to have more CITE events in DC or in any state or city for that matter, in fact, just fill out this form, because again, we're trying to expand. If you're from a different state or city and you'd like us to bring an event there, just reach out to me at info@caribbeansandtech.com. Just definitely go on the website, because that's exactly what Camille did. I did not know her beforehand. She was researching. She found the caribbeansandtech.com website. Shout out to Malcolm, who does our website. And she reached out. She said, hey, I see you're working on some stuff. Can we jump on a call? We jumped on a call. And we started planning this event. And I think we spoke in late July, if I'm not mistaken, and we're early September, and we already have this event going. So we're really committed to making sure that the Caribbean gets the resources and tools that it needs, and committed to connecting the people and the folks that are successful or are already on their journeys to folks that might not be as far along. So definitely reach out to Caribbeans in Tech, and you can follow us on all social media at CITE Collective. But and I want to give a big shout out to Make Offices. So they recently opened this specific location about a month and a half ago, and this is their very first event in the space. So we have to christen. So if anybody's looking for office spaces, just reach out to them at their website, on the website, or just let me know, and then there's some cards up in the front I can give you. They're looking for folks to fill out the space. And is there any? Yeah. And thank you to IDB Labs, Dora. Thank you so much for that information, because it was definitely essential. So now that you have the experiences from the actual entrepreneurs and the facts from the people that are building products and services, you have more information to kind of go out there and make decisions. We're going to be here for the next 30, 45 minutes. At 9 o'clock, you don't have to go home, but You know the rest. So if we could just, if you have any garbage, please throw it away. Please network, connect with each other, ask questions, and engage. And we're so happy for you to be here tonight at the very first CITE event and the first carrying capacity event. Thank you.